Today I'm going to show you how to enter an observation if you are a RINCON user. So over here on the left hand side you're going to see there is an enter observation button. If you click on this enter observation button, it'll bring you to the page we're currently looking at. To change the date, you're going to click on the date field. You're going to click on the date either using this calendar down below or typing in the numbers up here that you would like to see. Also at the very bottom of this you're going to see a small little clock. You can click on that clock. You can arrow up and down to change the time, or you can also click on these little buttons and it'll give you the 5-minute increments for this time. So maybe if I want it to say 9:35, I just clicked on it in there. Now I can put AM or PM, and when I'm complete, I just click off of it. The next box down is you're going to select your location. I'm going to select Horton as my location. Once you select Horton, you'll notice that it kind of shifts the page a little bit. That's because it's allowing you to see only the checklist that Horton's allowed to see. So you can see here, if I pop this box down, there's several different options in here for you to select from. I'm going to select the RINCON checklist. Once you select that checklist, it'll populate over here on the right-hand side. And the next thing down is Observer. Now there's several things about these drop-down boxes that you might not notice. The first thing is you can also come up here. This is a search box. So if I was looking for somebody specific, maybe in the list, and I don't want to have to scroll through the whole list, I can start typing their name. Once I start typing it, you see I've only put 4 letters in. Down below, those 4 letters will start populating for anybody that has them in it. So now I can pick Brendan's name. You'll see it there now. And that is done in every single one of our checklist boxes, or every one of our boxes in here. Also in this, you can select your coaches. So you can see your list of coaches here. You can select an area if you have an area that you're wanting to track. Also the departments. And then we have something new that may not be available for everybody, but it could be possibly on your list, and that is task tags. So if you can see here, I've already selected one. It's called stacking pallets. I do have a few more in here that I can select from. This is something that's set up in the corporate view, so you guys don't have the access to add these here, but you can do it a different way. I'm going to show you here in just a minute. But if you do want these, a corporate user can add these to the checklist where you can go in and select them instead of having to type them in. So what I mean by typing them in is the next box down is something that is the same. So this is task tags, because you can select from a list. The task observed, you actually type in there. So if stacking pallets wasn't there, I could type in stacking pallets instead in that box. So you can see that right here. So there's 2 different options that you can use that for. Not everybody is going to use every single one of these drop downs. So if you're missing one, it's probably because your company decided they didn't need to track some of the information. The next thing down is the number observed box, and in this number observed box you can either highlight, click a number, or you can toggle up and down to find the number that you're looking for, and that's for the number of people observed. I'm going to enter 1. As you come down the screen, we got a few more boxes. So this is what we call variables in RINCON usually, or what we also call forms. So if you're talking about these are the kind of some of the things that you'll be tracking throughout for your observation. So the first one is an example of one. I called it hours into the shift. So let's just say they're on their 10th hour of the day. Then we can select that. We can track some information off of that to see if they've been working for a while, if there was an at-risk, and that maybe there was some fatigue. So that's something they can track in there and look at. The next box down is the day of the week box. If you click on it, you can select day of week, the weather, and type of work. So maybe they were on startup. Also down here we have an observer comment box. You can always rename these boxes, so they may be a different name. But what we normally see put in these is the safe comments. So when you're out in the field and you're seeing some safe comments, you can start typing those safe comments in here. And as you type in this box, I'm going to make sure you notice that it does get bigger. So don't feel like you're running out of space and it's the only space you have to write a comment. That box will get bigger as you go down it. Same with every one of our boxes, just like that. So some of you, when you're coming in here, you're only going to see this observer comment box. If you are a reviewer, you will also have a reviewer comment box. So if you came in, reviewed the observation, and you were putting some comments in, you can enter those into this box right here. And then those will also be on a dashboard card feedback to the observer so they can see how they did. All right, we're going to go back up to the page. I'm done with the left-hand side, and we're going to go to the top over here. So the first thing we're going to start on is you can see that RINCON checklist is listed up here. This is what we selected over here. That's what populates this. Right next to it, there's a tiny little eye, and everybody always forgets about this. It could be because it's tiny and nobody notices it, but it's kind of important. So if I click on that little checklist, you can see that you can put your definitions in with each checklist if your company has done so. So this is in here. I can see what line of fire is. I can read the definition for it, and I can see examples. That's a good way for you to be able to show people where to go, and so they know what line of fire actually stands for in case they forgot. The next box down that we have, you can see, is a gray box. It says line of fire. That's one of our categories. So you can see those throughout the system. There's body position, and there's tools and equipment. That's just your categories. Underneath each categories, you have what we call exposures or behaviors, depending on what you guys call them. We call them exposures. And then you're going to have some choices. Now, everybody's choices can be different. So we have 4 different options for this line. So we have the option to have a safe and at risk, a barrier, and a not applicable box. If you aren't going to be using it and you didn't pick anything and there's no not applicable box right here, it will still count that as a not applicable one that you haven't selected because you just didn't need to. So as you see over here, we have these other 3. So I'm going to explain what each 3 of these are. So let's just say, without going down there, that I was looking at personal protective equipment. And in that personal protective equipment, I am trying to figure out which one is best to select. So the first one, if I was going to select safe, it means they're out there, they're doing their job correctly, they're wearing their proper PPE that has been requested by the company's policies, they're doing everything the way you want them to do. They're safe. They're doing that safely, their job safely. The second one over is an at risk. And what this box right here is used for is, let's say you go out, the guy is out doing his job, but he's not wearing his hard hat, and he just decided he was going to leave his hard hat in the truck. He forgot it this morning, and he didn't want to go back out and get it. So you say, oh, why aren't you wearing your hard hat? He says, oh, it's out my truck. I just haven't got it. Well, that would be something you'd say, hey, you really do need to wear it. It's a required policy. You could really get hurt by not doing that, but it would be considered more of an at risk. And then we have the third option. Like I said, not everybody will have this option, but what this barrier does is if the guy wasn't wearing his hard hat, and you ask him why, and he says, well, mine broke yesterday and there's no other replacements, we're out of them, then I would definitely have a barrier. If I click on barrier, you're going to see this box will pop up, but we're not quite there yet, so I will come back to this box in just a minute. I want to explain a few more things. So once I clicked on barrier, you're noticing that these 3 boxes, or these 3 options selected out here. We're going to discuss those after we talk about the box that just popped up, but I want to come back to these 3 options over here. So notice also that in some of these, you can select more than one. This is an option that the corporate users actually select. So if this is something you're not seeing, it's probably because we don't have it turned on that way. But there is the option to have a safe, an at-risk, and a barrier all in one. Or maybe the company prefers just to have one. So we would unselect these, as you can see there. So those are some of the different options you can have in here. You can have it where you can select multiples, or you can have it where they can only select one. They also have the occurrences in here. So you can say there's 2 safes maybe in here. So maybe you want to add 2 safes to this. You can see that'll pop up, and then you can add 2 safes, or 2 at risk, or 2 barriers, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to hit at risk. I'm going to come in here, and you're going to see the observer comment box first. It's also known as an exposure comment box. So this is going to be for your exposure. So if you had an at-risk or a barrier, you're going to want to make sure you fill this box out. So usually, most of the RINCON users will use something similar to these sayings. The while was because suggestion try, or while was because solution try. Those are their 4 or 5 default questions. Sometimes they'll also have a sentence out to help people understand what they're looking for. These are entered in when we set up the checklist, so we can always make some extra notes with those. These are not set in stone right here. So you may have some different ones. You're going to come in with that at risk, enter the information behind it. That way everybody can see it. Once you save, it'll be saved to this at risk. But also we have a couple other fields. So we have the field of SIF. If you know what SIF means, it means serious injury fatality or significant injury fatality, depending on your company. And you guys have been trained on that. That could possibly be turned on. So if the at-risk or the barrier that you're looking at is considered a SIF, you would want to make sure this button is turned on and you can click it. So that's what that's for. If you might not always have this on here if you're not a company that does anything with SIF. The next box down is the behavior type box. Most people know what this box is. Sometimes it'll say enabled, non-enabled, difficult, or it'll say easy, difficult, impossible. It just kind of depends on the company and how they like it spelled out. So these behavior types you can select, so you just click whatever you want to put in there. The next box down is the reviewer comment box. So if the reviewer is coming in and actually looking at the RINCON checklist and they want to put some reviews in, comments in, they can put that in this box right here. Now the next box down is usually done by an observer, a reviewer. So this is going to be ranking, the star ranking for your comments up here. So what this is there's a 5-dot ranking system. So 1 being, if you would usually use a 1, you would use 1 star, or 2, you use 2 stars, 3. And everybody has a different definition on how they want these rated and why they want a 1 or why they have a 2. Sometimes it's just as simple as they filled out all 5 of these questions up here. If they did, they have some good information in there, I put a 5. Some people are a little more picky. If they have like all 5 filled out, but one of them really doesn't tell them anything, they might give the person a 4 on their rating. Now we do have a dashboard card that will show this information in it, and you can go and look at that on the dashboard screen. Also, as we scroll down the page, we have some flags, which is what you call them in RINCON. We also call them forms over here, same as before. We have 2 sets of forms. These are normally done by the reviewer. If they're in here, some of these, and they're just going down and selecting yes, while was filled out, and then because was filled out, or solution was filled out. That's kind of what these flags normally are. There could be other ones in here, but those are the basic ones that we have usually. So once the reviewer is done, they'll also come in and save this, but this is just some of the information that you can see over here on this page. All right, as we go up to the top of the page, I'm going to show you a few other things. So over here on the right-hand side, when I did hit that at risk, these 3 buttons populated. They mean different things. The first one is if I want to go back to the box I was just in, I can click on that. It'll take me back in there, allow me to edit it and resave it. The second box over is an upload file button. Now you're going to see these upload file buttons all over the system. That's what that little cloud with an arrow means in it. So you can see one already right here. There's one buried in the action items, which we're going to talk about next. So if you wanted to upload something to the system, you can click on this. It'll pull up this box. Let's just say I want to add a picture. When I was out in the field, I saw something. I can find a picture. I can click on it, hit open. It'll add that picture to the screen behind me here. So now I have a picture right there. I can click save. And now that picture will populate and there'll be a 1 sitting right next to the upload file button. There you go. So right there. Now the person who's reviewing this can actually come in, click on this, and look at those pictures. The next thing over is the action item button. This is new to all of the RINCON users. You had something kind of similar in the RINCON system, but not quite. So the biggest thing that we find out with some of the systems that we have in our adaptive system is that people have no way of following up with things. So we are giving you that option to follow up with some of the things that you find. So I found out when I was doing this observation that the guy wasn't wearing his hard hat because we're out of them. So what I would do is I would actually click on this little button over here next to, if I was in personal protective equipment as an exposure, I would hit add action item. I would come in here. Now we do have different action item types. So we can have an at-risk action item, a hazard, Horton action item. It just kind of depends on, you can do a barrier to safe performance. That's the one I'm going to select. So I do a barrier to safe performance. And then as you see, as you come in here, all this information is populated in here for you. So you can see these are already filled out. It's saying today's the target date. I would probably make Friday the target date to give them time to get those ordered. I would hit open because it's going to be an open status. It is a urgent priority for me because I really think this needs to be done quickly because it's not safe for our employees not to have hard hats. I'm going to give a summary. Employee was not wearing hard hat. Description, assign employees and an employee to order the hard hats. The next thing down, you're going to assign that employee to go do that. So I'm going to go ahead and sign myself, Carla Winger, to it. And then as you see in the screen, the ad hoc exposures will actually show up. So I was actually pulling one for line of fire. It's not necessarily what this one is actually associated with, but it's just an example. So if I was looking actually for it and I wanted to add PPE and we have that option in here, I can find it in my list, add it to that, and then it'll show there. But I'm just going to tell you it always pulls for whatever line you're on if you're in that line. Once I'm done, I'm going to click submit. Now I've added an action item, so you can see that right there. And the last thing I want to show you up here at the top of the page is these buttons across the top. These buttons do several things. The search button is going to search for anything in the checklist. So if I type the word line, you can see now it kind of drops everything down into categories and only pulls up the exposures with the word line in it. So both of these have that. Easy way to find things without having to scroll fully through that list. The second thing is I'm not going to go back into is an upload file button right here. You can see that. This one here is an action item button. So we do have 3 action item buttons in our system. We have this one that is for the exposure line. We have this one right up here, which is actually for the entire checklist. So if you were out in the field and you were doing an observation, but you saw something that really wasn't an exposure necessarily, but you wanted to add an action item, maybe it was just as simple as a light bulb being outside the maintenance shop and you wanted to add an action item for somebody to change that, you can do that in here. So you can click on this, add, this is kind of like an ad hoc, but this one also up here is one too. So you can use either one of those to kind of track that information. If you are a reviewer, you will see these 2 buttons. So you have the access to be a reviewer. This is where you can come in, review an observation, click on one of these 2 buttons, saying I haven't reviewed it or I have. So if I've reviewed this one, click reviewed. The next box that will pop up is the next reviewed one that needs done. So you can click on that, I'll take you to the next observation. But before I leave this page, I do want to point out 2 things on here. So there's 2 more buttons that are left on the page. Each one has its own thing. So if I don't click submit and stay, I just click submit, takes me back out, I'm ready to enter another observation. If I click on submit and stay, like I'm going to, it will actually tell me if I'm missing anything for one. So you can see I haven't put any reviewer feedback. So I need to find that. I'm going to put great job just so I can have a reviewer feedback. I also need to check this one in here. I doubt I put anything in here, so it's probably telling me that one too. I'm going to hit save here and then hit submit and stay again. As long as I don't have anything else, the validation warning will go away and allow me to submit. Now you might ask, how does it know that you submitted, or how do you know? If you give it just a second here, it's rethinking, it's still spinning up here, you can see. What it will do is if you hit that submit and stay, it'll actually add the observation ID number up here at the top. That way you know it's saved and you can go and search for that if you're looking for it again. So you can write that number down knowing that you put that observation in. Also, it populates a delete box, so you can delete this observation right here. And then if you want to go in and edit this, you can also edit, click update, and then it'll save it again and keep that observation ID number. Now I did say that there was another button that said submit. If you hit submit, it will not populate that number. It's not going to tell you that you've submitted it or anything. It's just going to allow you to go ahead and enter another observation. So just keep that in mind. I would suggest hitting the submit and stay just to see the number so you know it's been saved. That is all on how I'm going to talk about entering an observation in RINCON. If you have any questions, you can contact your account manager.